Well, good morning and welcome back to our journey through Lent toward the crucifixion of Jesus and the celebration of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. We've been looking at the contrast between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, which was inaugurated by Jesus, the Messiah of Israel, the Savior of the whole world, and the persecution and crucifixion of Jesus, and subsequently the persecution of his apostles, came at the hands of the adherents of the Old Covenant, the preservers and defenders of the Judaistic system. Now, the Apostle Paul is identified as the apostle of the Gentiles. And everywhere he went, he was persecuted by the Judaizers. He even had to tell his young protege, Timothy, that even though physical circumcision was no longer a part of the covenant, that because of these Jewish persecutors, it would be best if Timothy received circumcision. Wow. Young man, I want you to travel with me, but you're going to have to take one for the team. But later, Paul writes one of his most important letters, the letter to the Galatians, where he takes the Judaizers head on. And he says in Galatians 5, verse 2, if you receive circumcision, Christ will be of no benefit to you. And those followers of Christ who were coerced into receiving circumcision, he says in verse 4, you've been severed from Christ. Now that's pretty serious. I don't care how you slice it and dice it, no pun intended. I believe Galatians is one of the most important books of the New Testament because it exposed the distinction between the Old and New Covenants, the physical Jerusalem and the heavenly Jerusalem, Mount Sinai and Mount Zion. And Paul uses Abraham, his two sons, Sarah, his wife, and Hagar, his concubine, to illustrate what was taking place in this new covenant. He says in Galatians chapter 4, verses 22 through 26, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by the bondwoman and one by the free woman. But the son by the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, and the son by the free woman was born through the promise. This is allegorically speaking, for these women are two covenants. One proceeding from Mount Sinai, bearing children who are to be slaves. She is Hagar. And now this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. Now notice it. This Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present Jerusalem. For she is in slavery with her children, but the Jerusalem above is free. She's our mother. Now notice what Paul says. You can't get past this. Paul says that the present day Jerusalem, not today's Jerusalem, the present day at the time he wrote this, prior to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the present day Jerusalem corresponds to Hagar and Ishmael. And the righteous remnant of Israel, those who recognize Jesus as the Messiah, correspond to Sarah and Isaac. Now Paul went on to say in verse 29, but as at that time, the time of Isaac and Ishmael, the time of Hagar and Sarah, he who was born according to the flesh persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit, so it is now also. Not now, not when you and I read this, but now at the time that Paul wrote it. So what's he saying? The persecution of Jesus, the persecution of the apostles, the persecution of the early followers of Jesus was taking place at the hands of those who were born according to the flesh. They were fighting to maintain their Judaistic system, and they were committed to stamping out this messianic movement and its followers. The Apostle Paul protected the truth of the gospel of Jesus from those who sought to twist it and make it simply a sect of Judaism. It's not. The God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses was Jesus. That must be acknowledged. Otherwise, What's being proclaimed is a different gospel. Well, hey, thanks for joining me this morning. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow morning, and we'll continue to look at the significance of this new covenant inaugurated through Jesus. I hope you have a great day today.